Hello, it's Romanosky from Calgary, Canada. I'm shooting from the Lugnuts facilities, and I'm surrounded by some cars here that we are selling on Bring a Trailer. And this video, I'll focus on my 1989 Mercedes-Benz 420 SEL. This is the W126 S-Class that was produced from 1979 to 1991. As with all the videos that I do, I try to be as thorough as possible. Most of the sales are online. Almost nobody ever looks at the cars, so people are buying them sight unseen. So this video is designed for the person who might be sending somebody some money that they don't know for a car they haven't seen, maybe in a different country, maybe in a different continent. So we'll try to be as thorough as possible, both with photographs and video. We'll also do a long narrated driving video where I can kind of explain the history of this car and my 12-year ownership of it. So this is my own personal car that I actually really quite loved, and it just doesn't get driven anymore. And I just lumped it in with all these other cars. It's being sold no reserve on Bring a Trailer, as is the Citroen 2CV, as is the SL 500. And then we also have a Honda S2000, which is ending next week. That'll be, I think, maybe June 23rd or 24th, I think. Ending shortly, anyway, in a few days. And we are going to be listing the 70 Jag E-Type Series 2 and the Mini Cooper S with a 6-speed gearbox. But anyway, back to this car. We can do a exterior walk around. We'll show the interior. We'll look at the undercarriage. We'll give it its driving video. We'll break the video down into sections so you don't necessarily have to digest it all in one sitting. You can kind of come back to various sections. So generally, in and around 2012, 2011, when my wife and I were pregnant with our first child, and I had a Mercedes 560 SEC, I went searching for the best W126 sedan, long wheelbase sedan, I could find, because that's what I wanted my firstborn child to drive around in. Because it's safe, because it's big, because there's lots of room in the back, and because I was a big fan of the 126 series, that's what I wanted. And I went on eBay and I looked for months, and I found one in New Jersey with 31,000 miles on it from a guy named Dean Lumbach, who's now made quite a name for himself selling ridiculously low mileage Mercedes. I don't know where he finds these cars, presumably from a bunch of wealthy households in and around New Jersey, where he's based out of. So I got the car from him in 2012. It looked new. We used it for 4 or 5 years as family transport, then had more kids, got a minivan, etc. And I haven't really used it that much since. I've still maintained it, but I haven't really used it. It suffered a little bit, with 40,000 miles that I put on it. It's not quite as pristine as when I bought it, of course, but it's still every bit as comfortable, every bit as reliable, every bit as beautiful. It just, has more marks on it. Last year it was in a hailstorm, and it got some hail damage. Now I've done my very best to show you, either with photos or video, the hail damage. It's so slight that unless the light hits it perfectly, you just can't see it, okay? So nobody's going to notice that this car is hail damage, but if you know about it and you look for it and you play around with the light, and you can kind of see, you can then see some of the points where hail hits it, but it does not detract from the car. Nobody's going to notice it, and it's devalued the car significantly. So yet it's devalued the car significantly. So if you want a great entry-level classic that's also a great daily driver, that's practical transportation, and you want a 126 at what I'm sure will be a decent price, the car, you should really look at this one. I've spent over $25,000 in maintenance at my price, which is, wholesale price, maintaining it and keeping up on the maintenance of this car. I've maintained it without regard for cost for 12 years. I like maintaining the car. It makes me happy changing the oil in it. Anyway, let's start with the exterior walk around. So if we get up close, we can see it's original paint throughout, but I've had to touch up all the various rock chips as we've collected them throughout the years. So from 5 feet away, it looks perfect, but if you get up close, you can see these areas in the front have had, you can get a close-up on those. They have had some rock chips. We did have some rust coming through the chrome on the bumper, and so we removed the bumper, took everything apart, took the inner and outer assemblies apart, took the top off, bought all new hardware for the bumper and put it all back together. I tried to bind one of these pieces as well, because you can see that we had to fill in with Por 15 a part where the chrome had flaked off here and here. But I'm in Canada, and I bought the thing on eBay, but the guy wouldn't ship it to me, so I put the old one back on. But if you can find another one, which I'm sure you can, everything's been already taken apart and cleaned up, disassembled, so replacing that wouldn't be a big deal. The grille still looks good, and the Mercedes emblem isn't faded. The bumper has been refinished. I got a dent in it in this area, so if you look at it carefully, you can see still a little bit of prep marks. I tagged something with a corner, and you can close up on that, and you can see that there's some prep marks and some cracking there that's been painted. Okay, but if we look here on the front driver fender, we had a little bit of corrosion that was starting there. So I scraped off all the corrosion, we hit it with a wire brush, we took the bumper off to get at it, we went in inside and outside with the wire brush, scraped it all out, painted it with Por 15, and then painted it with body color. So that shouldn't come back, and it looks like we stopped it. This is an area where they're known to rust, so we just didn't want it to go any further. You can't notice it unless I point it out, but it's there. We have a chip in the rear door that has been filled in. We've got some other chips. I guess you can thank my kids for this. A couple marks on the rear door as well. Otherwise, the flanks are clean. The trunk lid is good. The rear bumper, we've got a couple marks on it. I guess I just did that. This side looks good. My wife was rear-ended at very low speeds, actually with our baby in the back. She kind of freaked out about it. She just got bumped. It was under 5 kilometers an hour, but it did scratch the bumper, and we got the bumper refinished. I think that's a Carfax claim. I guess it was bought from Benzel Bush, which is, I guess, in New Jersey. 126s are known to delaminate the rear screen. They get a little cloudy in this area. Water runs in and pools, delaminates the screen, and this area turns white, and then it takes out your rear window heater. So in this case, this hasn't happened with this car, and there's no delamination, and the rear heater works fine. On the passenger side, the flanks are totally clean. I don't see any door dings at all. One of the great pleasures of a 126 is opening and closing the doors. And there hasn't been a car made before or since that has quite that feeling of solidity when you open and close a door than a 126 S-Class, and that's one of the reasons why I like them so much. Just incredibly solid. Okay, we can look at the wheels. These are the original, I don't know how to say it, Gull Dickel or whatever they and they're in decent shape. They wear older Pirelli P4000 tires. Those came off, believe it or not, a 300 SL Roadster, and we put Michelin XWXs on that, fresh tires on that car. It's a $2 million car now. But the tires are brand new. The car probably hasn't, that car probably didn't travel 1,000 kilometers, and I just couldn't bear to throw them out, and so I put them on this car. They are slightly bigger than the standard tire. These would be 205 70s, and the car would have come with 205 65s, so they're maybe 5% or so bigger than the originals. But they're a ZR rated tire, and you can't even buy those anymore. Very difficult to find a 15-inch tire that is that's ZR rated, or VR rated, that the car would have come with new. You have to go to one of these reproduction, like a Michelin XWX or Dunlop SP Sport or Pirelli P5, I guess, to get the correct speed rating. So I like these tires because they're correct speed rating, they're brand new, they were in a temperature-controlled man cave, you know, but they are older tires. There's no reason to change the tires, in my opinion, unless you have a $2 million car that can go 150 miles an hour. Okay, so that, I guess there's a big chip in the windshield. Here, interestingly, it's been there for 5 years. My wife got it, scared the daylights out of her on the freeway. But because the windshield in these cars is held in with a rubber seal and the windshield can move, there's no stresses acting upon it on the body shell, so then you can get a big chip like that and it doesn't crack the windshield. Since it's totally out of the way, I never replaced it. And that's the original windshield in the car. Today, of course, windshields are glued in, you get the slightest little chip and all of a sudden the windshield's gone. So it's another reason why I like these cars, just because of their durability. Okay, so now we bring out the paint meter and we'll just go through the car and measure the paint depth. This meter is set up in micrometers, which is 1/100th of a millimeter. Factory paint is around 200 micrometers or 0.2 of a millimeter, but over 35 years or so it gets polished down. So let's just see what we have here. And we're looking for consistent depth. If this car was repainted, we would be seeing numbers in the 4s, 5s, and 6s. And if there was any filler in it, you'd see either nothing if there's too much filler, or 1,000 or 2,000 micrometers, which is a couple millimeters. Okay, so I know I've done this car before, and every panel has uniform paint depth, and so it's all factory paint. Quite unusual for a 1989 German car to have unusual paint, even if it hasn't been hit or scratched. If it's been left out in the sun, the paint will start to oxidize and crack. And so this one, it's had a pretty good life, actually. So let's just go through all the panels. Hood. I mean, you'll get subtle variations, just the way the paint. It's a very sensitive instrument. You get subtle variations just depending on how the paint was laid down. Obviously it'll flow to some extent. So there'll be places where it's thicker and thinner, even when it was brand new. But that's pretty tight. I'm trying to think of the last time I've done a media report, and I mean the variation is only about, well, I think the lowest reading I got was like a 95 and the highest was a 150 or something like that. So we're talking about paint depth that isn't that's uniform up to 1/10 of a millimeter on this car. Yeah, you don't want big variations in the roof. That would definitely be a bad thing. Okay, so factory paint on a 1989 Mercedes 420 SEL. So let's go inside the car and we'll do a video of the interior, which is quite remarkably well preserved. If these cars are baked in the sun, the dash will start to crack. And so this dash is still soft and supple. It's in perfect shape. Also, the wood will fade. And this is the Zebrano or zebra wood. And it's not faded. The veneer always cracks. There's just nothing you can do about that. And we can see that there is some cracking on this piece here, but it's not too bad, and there's no chunks taken out of it. The wood on the oh, you're back there. The wood on the vertical surface fares a little bit better. Maybe if I open the sunroof. Sunroof does work, as do all the windows and central door locking, etc. Okay, so all the buttons look good. The white markings haven't worn off. The carpets are all in excellent shape. It's always worn like 3 layers of carpets. We've got like the original Benz velour, and then we've got the floor mats, and then I put the cocoa mats on, and then when the car is driven in winter, it gets the rubber mats on top of the cocoa mats. So except for the driver, who, you know, I don't want them to be that thick. But anyway, I've taken great care to keep all of the carpets in perfect shape. And, you know, if you can lift up anything and see that they're basically all perfect. You couldn't really ask for any more than that. The seat, you know, we've got some wear on the, I think you'll have to get out of the, maybe you can get it. We have some wear on the bolster, as you'd expect it. I've always had seat covers on the car, front and back. And I've always put you know, leather cleaner and conditioner and so on, and made sure the leather has always been supple. So it's still really beautiful, supple, soft leather. Also, the springing in the seat. You know, if you get some of the bigger people, you know, the springing in the seat can collapse, and so you know, this isn't the case, and it's still firm. In the rear of the car, you know, like I said, everything's been covered up with like 3 layers before any kids ever been in here. So there's no evidence that it's ever carried children. I did install the rear seat anchors in the back though, and we'll see. I guess that's empty, and then we see the factory first aid kit that is also present. Headliner's excellent. Sometimes the area, the sunroof panel gets discolored, and not the case here. So there's no water ingress, no water staining. There's no stains on the carpet. There's no rips in the leather. Leather's all gorgeous. The wood back here is gorgeous. Interior here looks, it almost doesn't look like a used car. It's beautiful. Okay, so there's no issues in the rear of this S-Class. It's beautiful inside, and it's a great color. We've got a little bit of a chunk taken out of the rubber sill. I don't see any other flaws. Let's look in the trunk. Now, despite this being a kidmobile, I lined this with like 6 layers of extra carpets and mats and everything else to make sure that nothing happened to it. And the carpet is still in perfect shape. You can get a scan of that. And if we look in there, this has never been used, this wheel. It's brand new, and it is a 205/65 VR15 Pirelli. Is that a Pirelli P5? Yeah, okay. Pirelli, oh, P6. Okay. So that's what it would have had new. So in that respect, the Pirelli P4000s that are on it are kind of a happy coincidence. We have the tool roll, which all the tools are present, and an extra wheel cover. So all is in perfect order in the trunk of this car. We can also see that the panels of this car have it has all its original panels, all its original paint, and the VIN stickers are in the panels, ending in 891. Okay. All right, so everything is in order here. I made sure that anybody who worked on it knew what they were doing, that they maintained the correct routing and so on for all the different wires and hoses and so on. And you know, the car has had excellent care over the years. We did replace the AC last year. We retrofitted the car with R134A, and we replaced all the parts too. Like, we didn't just change the refrigerant, which will just leak out if you don't. So we replaced all the bits, and so the AC blows cold. Everything works properly with that. Like I said, I probably changed the oil. I think I calculated 11 or 12 oil changes in 40,000 miles. Does that make sense? Yeah, something like that. But or maybe even more than that. Anyway, it's all in the maintenance records and the summary of that, which is in the photo gallery. About every 2,500, 3,000 miles, it changed oil in the car. So it all behaves perfectly. We can show you that in the driving video, where we start up and drive the car, listen for unusual noises, etc. The hood pad on this one is okay. It's starting to get a little bit dry, and no doubt it'll start crumbling at some point, but for now it's okay. The battery was new last winter, and the car has no issue starting when it's cold. Most of the ancillary components have received regular maintenance, as has the transmission. So this piece started to crack, and I replaced that last year. Okay, here's the data card on this car, and so we can get a close-up on that. And these show the color, which is 702, which is smoke silver, and then these are the various option codes that the car has. It's funny that these numbers, like the 412 and the 810, they haven't changed. An upgraded sound system is still 810. Or at least I think that's what it is. It's been a while. Also, we can see each panel. Again, 391 has the VIN stickers on it. Just confirms the representation. This car has all original paint. We might as well get the close-up of the data card inside with the VIN 391, and it should show you the date of manufacture somewhere. 08 of 88. So let's do a cold start and a driving video. With the 117 engine, the V8 engine, it is known for a couple of, it's extremely reliable, but it is known for a couple of potential trouble spots as the mileage gets up there. And one of them is for the timing chain. It's a durable dual row timing chain, not like some of the earlier V8 engines, which were single row, which did give trouble. So it's a very reliable engine, but at a higher mileages, the chain wraps around these, it's almost like a Teflon guide, and those guides can get brittle and break, and then there's movement in the timing chain, which then can kind of slap around and potentially skip, and it is an interference engine. So you want to make sure that when you run a 117 V8 engine, that the timing chain is quiet. Typically you'll notice that on startup. Tensioner isn't tensioning the chain properly and there's some slack. I did have a 560 SEL with about 250,000 kilometers on it, so more than double what this has. And in fact, the guides did break, and we just got lucky because the piece that broke off the guide didn't get jammed somewhere and cause the chain to skip. So it can happen with these engines, and so we can do a cold start on this engine, and I can put the microphone close to the front of the engine, and you can, it's fine, but we can demonstrate that. And the other thing that the 117 engine, as it gets older, you can have some excess valve train noise, and you normally notice that as kind of just a louder clicking from one side of the engine to the other. So we can also listen for that. It's not there, but again, we'll demonstrate that. These engines are fantastically reliable. But that doesn't mean you don't have to look after them. And this one, I've owned this car for 12 years. I don't think I've given it an oil change like every 2,500 miles or something like that. So I've been really up on top of the maintenance, and it has behaved perfectly. But I'm going to leave the microphone here and then go start the engine. And Aiden, maybe you can come in. And I think why don't you just hold the microphone close to the engine, and I'll just start it for you. So the engine behaves perfectly, and it always has. This car has always been looked after. We don't hear any characteristic slapping when you start it up from cold, and my 560 did do that. I have heard that noise before, and we did take it apart and we did find broken guides. So I have an idea to know what to listen for on these engines. Not that I'm expecting it with 70,000 miles. That's something I think you look at seriously after 100,000 miles, or if it's displaying any strange noises. But this one doesn't. And you can hear that the valve train is really quiet. The idle is steady. The idle will vary depending if the AC compressor cycles in or off, and there's a clutch on the fan. But the idle's always been rock steady. The oil pressure's always been perfect. The oil has always been clean. When I did the valve cover gaskets, the camshafts were beautiful. They didn't have any wear on them at all. And the engine, gearbox, the whole drivetrain on this car has always been nothing but perfect. Okay, so there's absolutely no issues with the drivetrain in this car, and I trust it completely. And I'd get in this car and drive to Florida tomorrow, and I wouldn't even check the oil. It's changed the oil, but it really is fully serviced car, ready to go anywhere. We can look at some of these gauges here. Well, we're almost out of gas. We're showing 3 bar of oil pressure. It's always pegged at 3 bar when you start it up, as it should. I don't think I've ever seen it below 1, and it usually settles between 1 and 2 when it's hot, and we're running 0W40 oil in it. It's never overheated, and when it's fully up to temperature, the needle will be halfway in the gauge. It's never gone any higher than that. The clock works. and we can see that the idle is rock steady. The AC was retrofitted with R134A last year, and it is blowing cold, and the climate control, temperature control works. The radio works in the car. We'll demonstrate the sunroof, and it's a beautiful sunroof. I notice on many 126s, for whatever reason, the this part of the headliner, like the underneath of the sunroof, gets all marked up for grease or whatever, and that isn't the case here. So all the lights work, antenna works, heated rear windshield works. One issue with 126s is that you know, if the seal dries out on the rear window, moisture gets in underneath, and then it can either rust the bodywork, but before that it'll usually delaminate the rear screen, and you'll get these cloudy patches in the corner, and then it takes out your heated windscreen. So this car doesn't have that. All the seats work properly, headrests work properly, windows all go up and down, and they don't go overly slowly. Okay, so we'll do a short drive. We're in an industrial area, not the best scenery, but I'll demonstrate the operation of the car. And it drives beautifully, shifts beautifully, steers, stops, handles, as well as any S-Class I've had. It's also you know, I've had this car since it was, well, in terms of mileage anyway, basically brand new. So here's the story with this car. I got in the car business in 2001, and I worked at a Mercedes dealership. And what really struck me is that when I wandered through the shop, these older S-Classes had really high mileages on them, and they looked brand new. I just couldn't believe that a car could look that good with such high mileages. There were other cars, like some of the Volvos, that would have high mileages in the 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 kilometers, but they never looked good. They're always rusting. But the Mercedes, I mean, they look pristine, and yet they'd have 200,000 or 300,000 kilometers on them. So I was really quite taken with that. And we had a 560 SEL that came in on trade, and then I bought that. It was a little bit rough, and so I kind of made friends with one of the techs, and we went through it. And as I went through this process of sort of fixing all the little things that were broken and so on, I just realized how, you know, I realized the incredible quality that went into these cars and the thought that went into servicing them and so on. It was incredibly impressive. Literally, if something broke, he would just take it apart, clean out the old grease, put it back together, and it would work fine. So I got that car all sorted out and polished, and it was a lovely thing, and I had it for many years and put, I don't know, 30 or 40,000 kilometers on it, and it's probably still running around. I had customers that would come in and tell me they had 900,000 kilometers on their S-Classes. Like, it was amazing. Anyway, so I was very, very pleased with it, and I had that for many years, and that gave way to a series of E-Classes, 124s, and I think I had every variant of a 124, the sedan, coupe, convertible, wagon, and 500e. And I like those too, a little bit smaller, but I still like the size and the feel of these 126s. I then found a beautiful coupe from an older Mercedes mechanic, white on red 560 SEC coupe, and I drove that for many years, and I loved that car. I met my then wife in it, and I gave it to her as her daily driver, and then we got pregnant. Okay, and at that time, that's about 2011. Yeah, 2011. Then I started looking for a replacement for the two-door coupe, something that would be more suitable for a baby. So I figured that for my first kid, I wanted to get the best 126 sedan I could find, because I thought it was the safest, best built. There's lots of room in the back with the SEL, and I thought, well, I'll do that instead of the typical baby mobile. And I looked around. on eBay for several months, and I found this car in New Jersey that looked really good on eBay. The seller was a guy named Dean Lumbach, who I'd never heard of before, but who since has become very well known, writes for Sports Car Market, and he's in New Jersey and has this knack of finding incredibly low mileage Mercedes. Also, he was a pioneer of doing kind of underbody detail and so on. Anyway, the car looked new, and I would have bought a 560 or a 420, whatever the best one was. The 420 is a simpler rear suspension, non-self-leveling, and the self-leveling rear of a 560 can be a $5,000 bill. So I was happy with the 420. And particularly about this car because it looked perfect. And sure enough, when I got it, it looked brand new. Like I mean, I had one rock chip on one chip on the door, and that's about it. It was a brand new car. And so that was our family sedan for maybe 3 or 4 years. Until a second and third kid came along, and eventually we got a minivan. But I kept the car. I didn't drive it as much. I didn't really have a use for it, but I just couldn't bring myself to sell it. So it really hasn't been, like I've driven it a little bit, a few thousand miles a year, maybe for the last 5 years or something. But it's gone years where it's only gone, I think, 1,000 or 1,500 miles. And so now I just finally getting to the point where I just don't drive the car. And I'm just going to let it go. When I got the car, we did have some trouble with it, so when you see low mileage cars on Bring a Trailer and everybody says, well, you might have brake problems or fuel problems or this problem or that problem. Well, we in fact did have a fuel problem. And I immediately did injectors and fuel pump and fuel filters and all the obvious things, but we continued to have a stumbling. Anyway, so it took a while to sort that out, and what we found was gelled fuel in one of the lines. So we cleared that out, and that's been fine since. The only other trouble I had with it was, maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago, it would just die. Usually when my wife was driving it, usually when there were kids in the car, and usually in front of the school where there's a whole bunch of other parents watching. So anyway, that happened a few times, and I brought it in once, and they said, well, it's just your battery terminals, and I brought it in again, and they thought it was something else, and I brought it in again, and we thought, well, maybe it's the over voltage protection relay. We were just guessing at that point, throwing parts at the car, and finally it died again, and my wife just said, I'm not going to drive it anymore. It's always with the kids. And I took it back to Alpine, where I serviced the car, and Mark, who's sadly no longer with us, I said, okay, you can't give me this car back unless you fixed it. We can't guess anymore. Find the problem. And so he did. He let it idle for 8 hours until it finally developed the problem again, and it turned out to be a coil, and he found the coil was arcing against the side of the engine block, and it was just an intermittent coil that was doing it. Anyway, the most frustrating thing. But needless to say, we spent $300 on a new coil, and that problem hasn't resurfaced. So in 12 years, those are the only two problems I've ever had with the car, and it's just really gotten normal maintenance. Brakes and tires and oil changes and transmission service. Various things have started leaking, or have leaked, and I fixed them, like valve cover gaskets, power steering reservoir. Can't remember. It's all in the maintenance history, which is detailed, but all just normal stuff. And it's been dead reliable. It starts up in the winter, no problem. The battery's fresh this year. It warms up quick. It's actually, you can drive it in the winter if you want to. It's always been a good car. I've always had, at least accepting those two instances, complete confidence in it. And it's always been a pleasure to drive. Every time I drive the car, I I'm just by taken about just the overall quality and durability of the machine, and just how good a car it was. And in that era, you know, Mercedes made the best cars in the world. They were the most expensive cars for what they were. They had the highest customer satisfaction. They had the highest owner retention. They had the highest resale value. They had the highest safety scores. You know, they were just the best car in virtually every way. You paid for it. I mean, this car was, I don't know, $80,000 or something in Canada, when that amount of money would buy you a house. It was a lot of money, but you really got what you paid for. You got the best car in the world. So anyway, that's how I came to be driving Mercedes, and my you know, special fondness for 126 body cars. Okay, so anyway, we're at 80 kilometers an hour. What can I demonstrate? You know, if I floor it, you know, automatically downshifts. It'll go right to red line. You know, 120 kilometers an hour. You know, I can brake without any pulsation from the rotors. No vibrations. Hopefully that's not a police car behind me. And it tracks perfectly straight. It brakes in a straight line. The road's curved here. Doesn't do anything. There's no suspension noise to speak of. There's no wind noise. I don't know what to tell you about the car. Otherwise, it drives perfectly. You know, I can hear a little bit of creaking from some of the leather, but it's always done that, and that's normal. It feels as good as any 126 I've ever driven, and I've driven quite a few. And you know, I won't say it feels like a new car, but the car does not feel old. I mean, in certain ways, it doesn't have any electronics or whatever, but in the way that it drives, it doesn't feel worn, it doesn't feel sloppy, it doesn't feel, you know, it feels like it's good for, you know, it's got 70,000 miles or 120,000 kilometers. Feels like, as proverbial saying, it's only broken in. It feels like it's got decades worth of life left in it. And in fact it does. So we're just merging on the freeway. I don't really know that this is necessary. This is kind of a terrible road. It's full of expansion joints and so on. It's fast. It's nobody likes driving on the Deerfoot, but anyway, we'll just get up to speed here. So it's a 420, it's got 200 horsepower. Doesn't sound like a lot today, but it's more than enough to accelerate into traffic. You know, we're going far faster than the flow here, and you know, it'll do this all day long, all decade long, and it feels solid and safe, stable, you know, as you'd expect in S-Class 2. Absolutely nothing flimsy about this car. The HVAC is very quiet. The blower motor doesn't make, you know, no annoying noises. The AC and the heat work properly. There's not a lot of electrical accessories in this car, but what it does have works. So here's a corner that we can take reasonably quickly, just to demonstrate it. Downshift's nice. Power's out of the corner well. Makes a nice noise when you do it. And if you need to stop in a hurry, you know, brakes are excellent. Those are ZR rated 205/70 tires, and it locked them up on, or the ABS kicks on, but it momentarily locks the wheels at 70, 80 kilometers an hour, no problem. In its day, it was the safest car in the world. I think by a long way. There's all kinds of ads where these cars survive the most horrible, or the occupants survive the most horrible impacts because of the great strength of the body shell. Modern cars have more driver aids. They have pedestrian avoidance and rear, blind spot assist and different cameras and so forth. The thing with this car is that you don't need blind spot assist because you can see out of it. The visibility is excellent. A lot of the modern cars, they're styled in such a way which, particularly the rear three-quarter view, really suffers, and the rear windows are really small. And and with this car, the visibility is panoramic. The pillars are slim. The glass area is expansive, and you always know what's around you. And the mirrors are great, and so you don't actually need blind spot assist because you can kind of see in the blind spot. The new cars, for all their warnings and driver aids and radar and so on, also have elaborate infotainment systems, which are distracting. So the accident rates, despite all these electronic safety aids and driver aids filtering down to mainstream cars, the accident rates aren't, and the injuries aren't decreasing. Because the electronics which give rise to these safety technologies also give rise to these infotainment systems and apps and so on. So anything that the car can do to avoid getting in an accident, well, the car also does to distract you, so you're more likely to get in an accident, and the two things cancel each other out. I think there's a solid argument for a car like this, where it is excellent, extremely strong body shell and so on, and no elaborate infotainment and nothing to distract you except for what you need to know to drive. It doesn't even have a cup holder. Okay, so this car was meant for driving, for serious drivers who pay attention to what they're doing, and because of that, is probably a safer car than the new S-Class, which has got this giant panorama glass screen and can do all these ridiculous things that is just going to distract you because you're going to be always fiddling around with something. So I think I could put a very strong case together to say that this 126 is actually the safest car in the world.
So what do you think, what are the biggest differences between this 420 and your Toyota Century?
Yeah, that's an interesting that's an interesting comparison. The Toyota Century is, of course, the Japanese limo, and I have a 2002 V12 Century as well, right-hand drive. Just about all of them are right-hand drive, and it was the the top of the line Toyota and a Japanese icon, and used to ferry diplomats and CEOs around, and also the emperor. Okay. So, and they made a Century, hadn't really changed it too much from 1967 all the way up to, I think, 2016 or something like that. Got the V12 engine in 97. So they're completely different cars that both, I would say, reflect their sort of nationality. I suppose the Century is a lot very, very similar to what a Lexus is, and that the objective is to sort of isolate you from everything, isolate you from the rest of the world and put you in a bubble where you don't sense or feel anything. A Century, you know, the engine, even though it's a V12, doesn't make any noise. The suspension doesn't make any noise. Even the fabric, wool, is chosen because it doesn't make any noise. So the idea with a Century is, of course, you know, the owner of the car sits in the back, and you sit in this, well, there's this isolation chamber that's a bubble and don't feel anything, and then you're given, you know, a million buttons to play with, and you can put your feet through a pass-through in the seat and take a nap and get on your dictaphone and, you know, and create, you know, voice a message to somebody and so forth, and watch TV, and, you know, have all these remote controls to play with, and or take a nap or something. That's what a Century is for. It's a top-of-the-line Toyota luxury car, okay, and the Mercedes is the top-of-the-line Mercedes luxury car, but the Century is Japanese, and if you're a Japanese diplomat in crowded Tokyo or whatever, you just want to shut out the rest of the world and be transported in your bubble. But in Germany, well, you don't want to take an aircraft. You want to take your car because it's a little bit quicker, and you want to go on the Autobahn at 200 plus kilometers an hour, and you want to pay attention, and you're a good driver, and you want to get in the fast lane and get to your destination, you know, refreshed. So the car, this is a driver's car. I mean, the owner would be driving this car, not sitting in the back, although obviously some were used like that. But the difference is that you feel everything on the road. The steering communicates everything. You feel every bump. It's not like it's trying to isolate the bumps so you don't feel them. It's like it's controlling the bumps so it doesn't upset the car going 200 kilometers an hour, but you still feel everything on the road. So the suspension makes more noise. You feel more, you know, impacts from the road surface, etc. You feel all that stuff. The transmission's crisper. You feel it, and you hear the engine. So it's not trying to be the quietest car. It's not trying to isolate you from anything. It's just trying to, like, take the road and just make it comply to what you want to do, which is get from A to B as fast as possible. And so it's a totally different car. You know, I like driving the Century because you can just, you know, the steering is really light. You can just sort of float around, and it's fun for my kids to play with all the buttons in the back. And it's, you know, it's kind of a novelty as well, being a car that was never sold here. You wouldn't really want to go fast in a Century. It just won't do it. I mean, it will do it, but you'll never be happy. This is a car that actually appeals to the enthusiast a bit because you can floor it, you know, it'll downshift. You can take corners, you feel the road, and while it's not a sports car, it's giving you, you know, these sensory inputs which appeal to, appeal to the automotive enthusiast. And, you know, they're just two different expressions of luxury, I suppose, from completely different cultures for use in completely different places. So I've enjoyed both those cars. Both are, so those are the differences. The similarities would be that they're both at the absolute top of quality manufacturing and automotive engineering. And you could say that for both the Mercedes and the Century. Both are made to last forever. Both will go forever if you look after them. You know, an 80s S-Class and a 90s or a 2000 Century, you could make an argument for both of those cars being the best produced, best engineers, highest quality cars that have ever been made. You could make that argument for a Century, and you could make it for an S-Class as well. So in those two areas, the cars are actually very similar. It's just the execution of them, or the way they've adapted the engineering for each car's objective is completely different. So interesting comparison. In fact, I should do a video on both before I let this car go. Anyway, so we're done our road test and cold start of the of my 420 SEL. I've had the car for 12 years. I've maintained it without regard for cost ever since the day I got it in like early 2012 from Dean Limbach. Okay, so it's a few years of being a family mobile has taken its toll a little bit on it. It's collected its its share of minor chips and so on. It did get hailed on last year. You can't even tell, but I tried to photograph it or video it. It can't even show up in a camera. It's very minor, but it's there. But it still has a lot of life in it and a lot of enjoyment for the next custodian. And these are really beautiful machines, and this is a really good example of one. Okay, so with that, we'll end the drive portion of this video. Okay, well, I think that that will wrap up the video on this 1989 Mercedes-Benz 420 SEL W126. Like I said, I've owned the car and maintained the car without regardless of cost for 12 years. It's been loved, and it's been well looked after. It's absolutely reliable car. I get in this car and drive to Florida tomorrow, and I don't even need to check the tire pressures or the engine oil level. I just get in and drive. I have complete confidence in it, and that comes from owning and maintaining and knowing it for 12 years. So, just the reality is, it just isn't being driven anymore, and I just decided to clear out a bunch of cars that are behind me here before summer, and so it's a no reserve auction on Bring a Trailer, and I'm sure it'll go for a reasonable amount of money, and it's still got an awful lot of life left in it, and it's still a really beautiful machine. I mean, the hail will obviously detract from it, but again, you can't even see it unless you're looking for it. So it's really just something that appears on the Carfax, and that you notice only if you get the car in the right light. Other than that, you've got a beautiful older S-Class, and they really don't build them like this anymore, I can tell you that. So with that, Lromanosky from Calgary, Canada. Thanks for viewing these videos. If you are interested in a beautifully restored Series 2 E-Type or a later model SL or a Honda S2000 or a Citroen 2CV, they're all going up on Bring a Trailer shortly, or a really fancy Winnebago motorhome if you want that too. So with that, thank you very much, and Lromanosky from Calgary, Canada.